So, welcome back to another video here. I washed my head cover last night, still not dry, so this is DIY drying in action here. 可以洗车吧？可以啊，这个你要看到那个里面，这个里面洗不了。为什么？这个里面东西坏了。这旁边这个可以用是吧？对。那你看见什么？我给你计时。 Good morning from Golmud here. We are getting ready to set up. I just went and washed the bike. I wanted to wash off the excess salt also on my boots because they were just covered from salt from the other day when we got stuck in the Qarhan盐湖. Today our plan is to drive to a lake in the northwest of here, about 200 kilometers or so. I will show you guys on the map momentarily. So today we are going to be heading northwest through the Qinghai Basin to Dongtaijinaier Salt Lake, another salt lake. This one famous for having a greenish color due to the high copper content in the water. The total journey should be around 245 kilometers and take us around 2 hours and 48 minutes. The elevation should be pretty consistent along our route, staying at just around 3,000 meters. So today we are definitely not going to make the same mistake as yesterday, where we didn't gas up before getting on the road. So we're going to gas up here, so that way we can not have to worry about running out of fuel. Do you speak English? 一点点。一点点。你是从国外骑过来的吗？没有，我从广东骑过来的。你这中文可以啊？还可以啊。手机号吧。155。Now see, while it's a pain in the ass to have to register every time you want to get gas, I actually don't mind it as long as they're willing to register you. But the problem is that some places they won't even allow you to register, so that means they just refuse to give you gas outright. 走了，拜拜。拜拜。 So a difference today also is that we are not going to take the highway, because with the highway I really don't like that you can't get off, stop, or turn around for 100 kilometers. So we're going to take the Guodao or a national road today instead. But actually, I just remembered, because we just washed the bike again, that I forgot to put on some chain oil. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Okay, there we go. Now we're ready to roll. That there is the road that we're going to take today, the G215. The G215 runs 3,000 plus kilometers all the way from Ning'er in southern Yunnan to Mazhongshan in northern Gansu. It would be nice to come back out here again someday and ride this whole thing start to finish. So it looks like there's some sort of a police checkpoint or something's going on up ahead here. So I'm going to shut off my camera. Hashtag safety first. It really feels so nice to be on the G215 without the guardrails on either side like you have on the highway. It already feels so much more relaxing knowing that if there's an issue with the bike or I do need to stop, that I can just easily pull over. This makes for a much more enjoyable riding experience. Seeing that railroad off on our right there just reminded me that yes, for those of you that have played Battlefield 4, this Golmud is the same Golmud that is featured as the map called Golmud Railway Station in the game. Pretty unreal to be seeing these places with my own eyes. I have to say though, having played the game a bit, there are a lot less trees out here than on the Golmud map. But you guys will have to let me know how you think the realism compares. Wow, so we've got the train passing us on our right. This train is coming along the Qinghai-Tibetan railway line, and it's most likely coming from Xining, heading in the direction of Lhasa, with the next stop being the Golmud railway station. More interestingly though, is the railway itself. It's actually the world's highest railway line, reaching its highest at 5,068 meters, when it passes through the Tanggula Pass. This railway project was one of the flagship industrial projects in the region to connect the then frontier zone of Qinghai with the even more wild in the eyes of the Chinese, Tibet to the rest of the Chinese grid. And so, construction began in 1958 and was partially completed by 1984. And I say partially completed by 1984 because they had only finished the section from Xining to Golmud. This obviously was quite significant for the young city of Golmud at the time, because all those crossing into Tibet would have to stop in Golmud, the last Chinese stronghold before transferring to a car or bus and then traveling into the unknown lands of Tibet. As Paul Thoreau said when describing his experience riding the train in the 80s along these very tracks off to our right in his book titled Riding the Iron Rooster, he said, and I quote, "The main reason Tibet is so undeveloped and un-Chinese and so thoroughly old-fangled and pleasant is that it is the one great place in China that the railway has not reached. The Kunlun Range is a guarantee that the railway will never get to Lhasa." But that's exactly what it did in 2006. Although the remaining stretch of the railway line from Golmud to Lhasa did not begin construction until 22 years later in 2001, it finally opened in 2006, 48 years in total. And while it made rail transport into Tibet possible for the first time in history, to some degree it also took the wind out of Golmud's sails, where all of a sudden these passengers didn't need to stop in Golmud anymore. They could simply stay right on the train and wake up in Lhasa. However, the building of this railway was not without its difficulties. First, the nearly 900,000 square kilometers of permafrost. It freezes in the winter and becomes a bog-like marshland in the summer when it thaws. This means that the ground can rise and fall by as much as 30 centimeters in a single year. And while I'm no railroad building expert, I can imagine how having the ground underneath the tracks drop 12 inches could be an issue. This is why nearly 15% of the line's roughly 2,000 kilometer route is built on bridges. Moreover, this whole area is a hotbed for earthquakes, with it being the largest continental plate collision zone. Quoting Paul Thoreau in his book, Riding the Iron Rooster, it's the toughest land in China. And looking around here at the land, I would have to agree. In fact, I would even go so far as to describe it as desolate. But with that desolation comes opportunity. Now that we are around 50 kilometers or so north of Golmud, we are deep in mining country here. We're currently driving through察尔汗盐湖, or Qarhan Salt Lake. But that's actually quite misleading because it's not a lake at all, but a giant salt plain. And thus, we've been passing all these industrial complexes here that mine and process its natural resources. Some of the main ones being potassium chloride used in fertilizer and lithium carbonate used in, well, you guessed it, lithium batteries. I found a little entrance back there and we're actually riding through a mining zone right now. This pool off on our left is one of the many areas that have been dug out to collect the mineral-rich earth that is then transported to the nearby facilities for processing. So I've decided to take a little detour from the paved road to see how soft this sand is down here. So far it feels pretty compact. I'm still very new to riding in sand, so trying to play it safe. We're really out in the middle of nowhere here, and I haven't seen a single car in probably an hour or so. I don't want to sink into the sand out here by myself. So I've been noticing with the desert here that it's a bit different than your normal sand desert. Here there is a sort of crust made up of what I assume is salt and sand that acts as a sort of hard layer on top of the soft sand. So you can be riding along and then all of a sudden break through that top layer and then you're in some pretty loose sand. I think we're gonna take a little food break here. So we've just stopped off out here in the desert. On the menu for lunch today, we've got some leftover balza from last night and a bit of vitamin water to go with it. I've been driving for about an hour and a half here, done 100 kilometers in the desert, and well, what do you know, nothing but sand. We've got about 60-70 kilometers more to go, and then we should reach our lake, but I'm thinking that I'll try to find some accommodation first because it's awfully hot out here in this desert, and I think it'd be nice to offload some of this gear before we go exploring. Okay, the sand's a little bit deep here. Well, if you ever wondered what a remote truck stop in the middle of a Chinese desert looks like, here you go, sand and trucks. This is the only town within about a 100-mile radius, so that's why everyone is stopping here to get gas and food. Well, we're gonna gas up here because it looks like it's the only gas station around, and we need gas because we've only got about 40 kilometers left of fuel. 只有92是吧？95站在隔壁真是吧？95在那儿。Gotta go to the other gas station to get 95. Hey, 你好，加满95。先登记一下。你把那个本子给我。你身份证给一下，先刷一下。我是护照的。护照？身份证没有吗？How can I have a 身份证 if I'm not from China? As I said, I'm not from here. 身份证信息给，护照信息给一下，我也比较确定。好。All right, so we've got our gas here. We've got our hotel booked, and now we're going to head over to the hotel and unload some of this gear, and then do a bit of exploring with the daylight that we have left here. I'm not sure if you could tell at that gas station back there, but the wind has really picked up here. You can probably hear it in the microphone now too. I have a sneaking suspicion that a sandstorm is brewing. That there off to our left is Dongtaijinaier湖. However, with the lake being around 30 kilometers long, we still have a ways to go before we reach our campsite on the northeastern side of the lake. Now the only hope is that this campground actually accepts foreigners and that we can stay here tonight. Good news, we're checked in and we've got our keys. So at this campground they offer lots of different options for accommodation, but I picked the cheapest option, which funny enough still turns out to be the most expensive place I've booked thus far. Our tent for tonight cost us a whopping $70 US, which is crazy compared to the hotels I've been staying at in the $20 to $30 US a night range. Very curious to see what $70 US gets you out in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So, good thing we were able to check in here, and good thing that I chose this place and decided not to go farther, because they told us that there's going to be a serious sandstorm tonight. You could see it a little bit on the road coming in here, but so good thing that I've got all the gear unloaded, I've got the bike parked next to the tent, and I've got myself shelter for tonight. I was a little bit worried that the hotel here, that I would rock up here and then they'd say, that foreigners aren't allowed to check in, but so far everything has been smooth, and I've been using this app trip.com, and from what I found with them, if the hotel shows up on their website, then it means that the hotel has whatever the proper paperwork handles so that foreigners can stay there. So that's very good, because this place is really out in the middle of nowhere. If I couldn't stay here, I'd have to drive at least another 100 kilometers to, if not more, to be able to find some place to stay the night. So this is our little tent campground here. Got the bike parked over here. A little bit worried with this sandstorm coming that sand will get into places like this, but then again, what can you do, right? There isn't a garage in sight. We can only hope for the best.